Have you ever wondered how journalists get the real story from the world's most powerful people? I mean, getting a CEO or an industry titan to talk, really talk, is one of the toughest challenges out there. But what if there was a secret playbook for these high-stakes conversations? Well, it turns out there is, and it's based on some deep research with expert interviewers. Today, we're going to break it all down.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by figuring out who these elite informants actually are. Then we'll cover the essential groundwork, learn how to get past the gatekeepers, and of course, master the conversation itself. We'll even nail the follow-through. And finally, we'll see why these skills matter way beyond just the boardroom.
First things first, who exactly are we talking about? We need to understand them, because when you're dealing with these folks, you're playing by a completely different set of rules.
The experts have a name for them, elite informants, or EIs for short. And this definition is really important. It's not about having a fancy title, it's about having two very specific things. One, exclusive information you just can't find anywhere else, and two, the power to actually influence major outcomes. And that right there is why their perspective is so incredibly valuable and so fiercely guarded.
And here is the absolute #1 most important thing to get. In a typical interview, you, the interviewer, hold all the cards. You set the time, the place, you ask the questions. But with elites, that power dynamic is completely flipped on its head. The elite informant is in control. They have the status, and they expect you to bring your A game. They're looking for a stimulating, high-level conversation, not just a simple Q&A.
Here's a perfect little story of that power in action. A researcher was interviewing a top lawyer and made a tiny mistake. They wrote Part 2A of a law instead of Part 2IA. The lawyer immediately corrected them. Seems like a small thing, right? But in that one little moment, the informant asserted their superior status and expertise. It's a subtle but incredibly powerful move that just changes the entire vibe in the room.
Okay, so we know who they are, and we know they hold the power. Now, how in the world do you prepare for that? This groundwork isn't just prep. It's the strategic blueprint that pretty much decides if you succeed or fail before you even think about picking up the phone.
So the first big strategic question is all about timing. If you're working on some big project, when do you actually try to talk to the top dog? Early on or later?
The expert advice is crystal clear. Go after the elite later in your project. For one thing, just getting a yes can take months, sometimes even years. But more importantly, you need that time to become an expert yourself. You have to earn their respect. And here's the really fascinating part. Researchers found that the more knowledgeable they appeared, the more information the elites would actually share. It was almost like a reward for having a worthy conversation partner.
So, you've done your homework, you're ready to start talking to people, but in what order? Who gets the first call?
Now this is so counterintuitive. Your first instinct is probably to start with people you know, right? Maybe alumni from your university. But the research says that's a trap. These people are often, as one expert put it, one's own kind of people. They tend to think like you. The much smarter strategy is to first seek out people outside your network, folks who are way more likely to challenge your assumptions and keep you from just confirming your own biases right out of the gate.
All right, you're prepared, you're strategic, but now you come face to face with what experts all agree is the single greatest challenge of this entire process: just getting in the door. 78%. Let that number sink in. That's how many expert researchers say that their single biggest, most pervasive challenge is simply getting access.
And as you can see here, nothing else even comes close. Capturing their attention, using the right approach, yeah, those are tough, but they're distant concerns. Getting in the door is by far the biggest hurdle. If you can't solve for access, well, nothing else really matters, does it?
So, how do you beat those odds? The experts use a 4-part strategy. First, leverage every single network you have. Second, try to bypass the gatekeepers entirely with a direct email or maybe by creating an exclusive event. Third, if you can't go around them, engage them. Befriend the executive assistant, they can become your greatest advocate. And finally, you have to frame your request to show how this interview benefits them, not just you.
You're in. The door is closed. The meeting is happening. Now what? It's time to master the conversation itself. This is where all that preparation really truly pays off.
But there's a serious psychological trap here. As researcher R.J. Thomas warned, it is incredibly easy to be charmed by these people. They're professional communicators. It's called hostage syndrome, where you get so impressed that you lose your critical judgment and just start accepting everything they say. You have to go in knowing that's a risk.
So to avoid that trap, you have to actively manage the power imbalance. Get endorsed by a prestigious organization to signal your credibility.
Mirror their dress and habits to build rapport. Use subtle nonverbal cues to guide the conversation. And this one is crucial. You have to be willing to tactfully ask the tough questions that, as one expert put it, stretch the bounds of etiquette. This shows you're a peer, not just some passive student.
Of course, getting them to talk is one thing, but how do you get them to say something that isn't just the official, polished company line? How do you get to the real story?
It boils down to two things: confidentiality and neutrality. Confidentiality isn't just promised, it's proven through your actions. When an informant tests you, asking, "So, who else have you spoken to?" the only right answer is, "I'm sorry, I can't say." Passing that test builds a ton of trust. And neutrality means showing you understand their world without judging it. That's what makes them feel safe enough to open up about the real challenges they face.
So what does the conversation actually look like? This chart is so telling. A massive 83% of experts use a semi-structured format. That means it's not a rigid list of questions, but it's also not a completely free-form chat. It's the perfect balance. You have a clear set of topics so you get what you need, but you also have the flexibility to follow interesting tangents. It respects their control while still letting you achieve your goals.
The interview ends, you say your goodbyes, but you are not done. The post-interview phase is one of the most overlooked yet totally critical parts of this whole playbook. This is all about securing the relationship for the future.
Here's the 5-step playbook. 1. Always end with an open question, like, is there anything important we didn't cover? 2. Ask for referrals to other key players. 3. Set clear expectations for what happens next. 4. Remember that value exchange? Now it's time to provide it back to them with a report or presentation. And 5. Maintain contact. This isn't a one-off transaction. It's about building a real, long-term relationship.
So look, this might seem like a playbook that's just for journalists and academic researchers, but it's really not. These are high-stakes skills for everybody.
Just think about it. This is a universal toolkit. That's strategic preparation. That's what you do before a critical job interview. Empathy and adaptability, that's how you navigate a tough client meeting. Managing power dynamics is absolutely essential for any negotiation. And providing value, well, that's the key to building any successful relationship. This playbook isn't just about interviewing elites. It's about being powerful and effective in your own life.
And that brings us to a final thought. These powerful individuals, these elite informants, they hold the exclusive information that shapes our understanding of how business, politics, and society actually work. Their stories, they often become the first draft of history. And so the question becomes, who gets to hear those stories? Who has the skill, the strategy, and the sheer persistence to get past the gatekeepers? The answer to that question may very well determine the narratives that we all come to believe.